Many people assume that love always moves closer, speaks louder, and demands more attention. But some of the deepest forms of love do something unexpected. They become quieter. When a man begins to experience emotions that touch the deepest parts of his psyche, he may not rush forward. He may step back, not because he cares less, but because what he feels has become too important to handle casually. What appears to be distance may actually be an inner journey. What looks like silence may be a transformation taking place beneath the surface. Tonight, we will explore why sometimes the man who seems to be ignoring you is actually falling deeper in love than ever before. At the beginning of a connection, emotions often feel light, exciting, and uncomplicated. Two people discover each other, exchange stories, share laughter, and enjoy the thrill of being noticed. During this stage, communication tends to be effortless because there is little emotional risk involved. A message goes unanswered for a few hours, and neither person feels deeply affected. Expectations remain low and the heart stays relatively protected. Yet something profound happens when attraction begins to transform into genuine emotional attachment. The relationship stops being merely enjoyable and starts becoming meaningful. What was once casual suddenly carries weight, and that weight changes the way a person behaves. Many people expect deeper love to produce more words, more attention, and more obvious signs of affection. However, human psychology does not always work that way. When emotions become intense, the mind often slows down before the heart moves forward. A man who once spoke freely may become more thoughtful. Someone who seemed spontaneous may suddenly appear cautious. This shift can be confusing because outward behavior no longer matches the enthusiasm that existed in the beginning. Yet beneath the surface, something important is taking place. When a person realizes that someone has become emotionally significant, they begin asking questions they never considered before. They wonder what this relationship means. They imagine possible futures. They examine their own feelings with greater seriousness. They become aware that their decisions now have consequences, not only for themselves but also for someone they care about. What once felt simple now feels important. As a result, reflection replaces impulsiveness. Silence often emerges during this stage because the psyche is attempting to organize emotions that have become deeper than expected. Feelings that were once easy to express become difficult to describe. The individual senses that something valuable is developing, yet they may not fully understand its nature. Instead of speaking before understanding, they retreat inward. This inward movement is frequently misunderstood as disinterest. In reality, it may be evidence that the connection has touched a deeper level of the personality. There is also another reason this silence appears. Deep feelings awaken vulnerability. The more someone matters, the more there is to lose. Suddenly, rejection carries greater pain, misunderstanding becomes more frightening, and the possibility of heartbreak feels real. These fears do not necessarily weaken love. In many cases, they appear precisely because love is becoming stronger. The heart recognizes value and instinctively becomes cautious. This is why emotional depth often arrives quietly. Before meaningful love can be expressed with confidence, it usually passes through a period of contemplation. The individual withdraws into themselves, trying to understand the significance of what they feel. What looks like distance from the outside may actually be an attempt to create clarity within. The silence is not always empty. Sometimes it is filled with thoughts, emotions, questions, and realizations that are preparing the foundation for something far more serious than simple attraction. When emotions begin to deepen, something unexpected often happens within the human mind. What initially felt exciting and effortless can suddenly become intimidating. A person who once communicated freely may become more reserved, not because their feelings have diminished, but because those feelings have become more important. The heart naturally protects what it values, and sometimes that protection takes the form of distance. To an outside observer, this behavior may appear confusing. If someone cares deeply, shouldn't they move closer rather than farther away? Yet psychological reality is often more complicated than that. The moment a person realizes they have developed strong feelings, they also become aware of everything that could go wrong. The possibility of rejection no longer feels like a minor disappointment. It begins to feel like a genuine wound. The possibility of losing the connection becomes frightening because there is now something meaningful to lose. What once seemed simple suddenly carries emotional consequences. As a result, fear enters the picture alongside love. This fear does not necessarily indicate weakness. In fact, it often reflects the importance of the relationship. People rarely worry about losing what means little to them. Anxiety tends to grow in proportion to value. The more precious something becomes, the more carefully it is handled. A man who appears distant may actually be struggling with the realization that someone has become deeply significant in his life. His withdrawal may not be an attempt to escape the relationship. It may be an attempt to understand the powerful emotions the relationship has awakened. Many individuals are taught from an early age to remain emotionally controlled and self-sufficient. They learn to solve problems alone and hide vulnerability behind confidence. Yet genuine love challenges this pattern. It requires openness, honesty, and emotional exposure. For someone unaccustomed to such vulnerability, this experience can feel overwhelming. They may instinctively create space, not because they want separation, but because they need time to process what they are feeling. During these periods, an internal dialogue often unfolds. Questions emerge that were previously absent. Am I ready for this? Can I trust these feelings? What if I get hurt? What if I disappoint her? What if this relationship changes my life in ways I cannot predict? These questions are rarely spoken aloud. Instead, they circulate quietly within the mind, creating a sense of hesitation that others may misinterpret as indifference. Distance can therefore become a temporary refuge where emotional conflicts are confronted. The person is not necessarily running from love. They may be wrestling with fear, uncertainty, and the responsibilities that accompany genuine attachment. The silence that follows is often filled with reflection rather than absence. Behind every unanswered message or moment of withdrawal, there may be an unseen struggle between the desire to move closer and the fear of becoming vulnerable. What appears on the surface as emotional distance may actually be evidence that the relationship has reached a level where the heart can no longer remain unaffected. Sometimes the greatest battles are not fought between two people but within one person, as they learn how to carry feelings that have become too powerful to ignore. One of the most surprising aspects of deep love is that it rarely reveals only the other person. Instead, it reveals hidden parts of ourselves. Most people move through life with a carefully constructed image of who they believe they are. They focus on their strengths, rely on familiar habits, and avoid looking too closely at the areas that make them uncomfortable. This creates a sense of stability. Yet when a powerful emotional connection enters their life, that stability can be shaken. Love has a way of exposing what has remained hidden beneath the surface for years. At first, the connection feels focused entirely on the other person. Thoughts revolve around their presence, their words, and the emotions they inspire. But over time, something deeper begins to happen. The relationship starts acting like a mirror. In that mirror, a man does not only see the person he loves, he also sees himself more clearly than before. He notices insecurities he thought he had overcome. He becomes aware of fears he rarely acknowledged. He discovers emotional wounds that have quietly influenced his choices for years. This experience can be unsettling because it challenges the image he has created of himself. A man who appeared confident may suddenly question whether he is truly worthy of the relationship. Someone who seemed emotionally strong may become aware of how deeply he fears rejection. Someone who believed he had complete control over his life may realize how vulnerable he feels when another person's presence becomes important to his happiness. The deeper the connection grows, the harder it becomes to ignore these truths. The relationship begins illuminating parts of the psyche that were previously hidden in darkness. Old disappointments, past heartbreaks, childhood experiences, and unresolved emotional struggles may rise into awareness. What appears from the outside as emotional distance may actually be the result of an intense internal confrontation. Many people mistakenly assume that falling in love should feel comfortable all the time. In reality, genuine emotional attachment often creates discomfort before it creates growth. Love asks difficult questions. It challenges assumptions. It forces individuals to examine patterns they have carried throughout their lives. The closer someone feels to another person, the more difficult it becomes to avoid these inner realities. This is why periods of withdrawal often occur during deep emotional development. A man may step back because he is trying to understand what the relationship is awakening within him. He may need time to process emotions that feel unfamiliar or overwhelming. The silence is not necessarily directed toward the person he loves. It may be directed inward toward aspects of himself he is only beginning to recognize. In many cases, this inner struggle becomes a turning point. The relationship evolves beyond attraction and enters a deeper psychological dimension. Love stops being merely about companionship and becomes a catalyst for self-discovery. The person is no longer simply learning about someone else. He is learning about himself. And that journey can be both inspiring and frightening, because it requires facing truths that can no longer remain hidden once the heart has been deeply touched. One of the most common misunderstandings in modern relationships is the belief that constant communication automatically equals deep love. Many people have learned to measure affection by the number of messages received, the speed of replies, or the amount of attention given throughout the day. While these things can certainly reflect interest, they do not always reflect emotional depth. In fact, when feelings become truly significant, the nature of connection often changes in ways that are less obvious but far more meaningful. In the early stages of attraction, communication is often driven by excitement and curiosity. There is a strong desire to know more about the other person, to stay connected, and to maintain the emotional energy that comes with something new. Every conversation feels important because the relationship is still being discovered. Yet as the connection deepens, a shift begins to occur. The relationship no longer depends on constant interaction to feel real. The emotional bond starts developing a sense of stability that exists even during moments of silence. For many men, deeper love creates a greater sense of responsibility. Their attention gradually moves away from simply maintaining contact and toward understanding what kind of future they are capable of building. They begin thinking about practical realities, personal growth and long-term commitment. Their focus broadens beyond the immediate emotional satisfaction of frequent conversations. This change can sometimes be mistaken for a loss of interest, when in reality it may indicate that the relationship has become more serious in their mind. As emotions mature, communication often becomes more intentional. Instead of speaking constantly, a person may begin choosing their words more carefully. They may prefer meaningful conversations over endless exchanges that carry little emotional substance. The goal is no longer simply to stay connected every moment of the day. The goal becomes creating a connection that has depth, trust, and lasting significance. This transformation can be difficult to recognize because it does not always produce dramatic outward signs. A man may communicate less frequently than before, yet think about the relationship more often. He may spend less time expressing every passing emotion and more time trying to understand those emotions. What appears to be distance may actually be reflection. What appears to be reduced attention may actually be increased seriousness. There is also a psychological comfort that develops when love grows deeper. In the beginning, frequent communication often serves as reassurance. Each interaction confirms mutual interest and strengthens confidence in the connection. But when trust begins to form, the need for constant reassurance naturally decreases. The relationship no longer depends on continuous proof because the emotional bond feels more secure. This does not mean that communication loses importance. Rather, its purpose evolves. The connection becomes less about quantity and more about quality. Presence is no longer measured only by how often someone speaks. It is measured by their consistency, their sincerity, and the way they show up when it truly matters. Deep love often moves beyond the need for constant visibility and enters a stage where emotional commitment exists even during moments of quiet. In that space, the relationship becomes rooted not in endless contact, but in a growing sense of trust, understanding, and emotional permanence. The deepest forms of love are not always announced through dramatic declarations, constant attention, or endless promises. Often, they reveal themselves through something much quieter and far more powerful: transformation. Words can be spoken in a moment of emotion, but genuine change requires time, effort, and commitment. When a man begins falling deeply in love, the most important evidence is often not what he says but how he gradually begins to change. At first, these changes may be almost impossible to notice. They happen beneath the surface, hidden within daily decisions and shifting priorities. A man who once thought only about his own needs may begin considering how his actions affect someone else. Decisions that were once made independently now include another person in the equation. He starts imagining possibilities that extend beyond the present moment. Without realizing it, his perspective begins expanding. This transformation occurs because deep love challenges the individual to grow beyond old limitations. Relationships that remain on the surface often demand very little personal development. But when emotions become profound, the desire to become a better version of oneself naturally emerges, not out of obligation or pressure, but because something valuable has entered life. The presence of someone meaningful creates a powerful motivation for growth. A man may begin confronting habits that once seemed acceptable. He may become more disciplined, more thoughtful, or more aware of his behavior. He starts asking himself questions that previously held little importance. Am I becoming the kind of person capable of sustaining this connection? Am I emotionally mature enough? Am I creating a future that can support the life I want to build? These questions signal an inner shift that often accompanies genuine emotional attachment. What makes this transformation difficult to recognize is that it rarely happens quickly. Modern culture often celebrates visible expressions of love, while overlooking the slow psychological evolution taking place behind them. Yet lasting love is usually built through gradual changes rather than dramatic moments. The strongest commitments are often formed through small decisions repeated consistently over time. There are moments when this process creates silence. A man may withdraw temporarily because he is focused on confronting aspects of himself that require growth. He may be working through fears, insecurities, or responsibilities that the relationship has brought into focus. From the outside, this period can appear confusing. Yet internally, important changes may be unfolding. The relationship is no longer simply providing comfort or excitement. It is becoming a force that inspires personal evolution. Love has a unique ability to reveal possibilities within a person that they may never have discovered alone. Someone who once feared commitment may begin valuing stability. Someone who avoided vulnerability may slowly learn honesty. Someone who resisted change may become willing to grow because the relationship has shown them a future worth pursuing. The most meaningful proof of deep love is often found in these transformations. It is found in the way a person becomes more responsible, more self-aware, more courageous, and more capable of giving than they were before. While words can express affection, transformation demonstrates devotion. And sometimes the clearest sign that a man is falling deeper in love is not the amount he says, but the person he is quietly becoming because of what he feels. So before assuming that silence always means indifference, consider a different possibility. Sometimes a man grows quiet because his feelings have become too significant to treat casually. Sometimes distance is not the absence of love, but the beginning of emotional depth. And sometimes the heart travels inward before it can move outward. The greatest transformations often happen unseen, and the deepest forms of love are not always announced with noise. They are revealed through growth, reflection, courage, and the quiet decision to become someone worthy of the connection that has changed them forever. Thank you for spending this time with me and exploring these deeper layers of human connection. If today's message resonated with you, remember this. Not every silence is rejection, not every distance is abandonment, and not every quiet moment means love has disappeared. Sometimes the heart speaks in ways that words cannot express, and sometimes the deepest emotions are hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. As you move forward, trust not only what people say, but also who they are becoming. Look beyond appearances, beyond assumptions, and beyond fear. Human relationships are often far more complex and far more beautiful than they first seem. The journey of love is not always a straight path. It is a process of growth, self-discovery, vulnerability, and transformation. If this message brought you insight, comfort, or a new perspective, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribing for more explorations into the hidden depths of the human mind and soul. Until next time, take care of yourself, trust your inner wisdom, and never underestimate the quiet transformations happening within your life and within the hearts of those around you. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and goodbye for now. Stay thoughtful, stay strong, and keep seeking the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface of every human experience. See you in the next video.